What investigators didn't know at the time is that inside the aircraft there was already fear, because just minutes before the crash, a message was sent from the plane. Not to authorities, not to air traffic control, but to family. 4 words. Words that suggest the people on board knew something was wrong before anyone on the ground did. And as more details emerge about the flight path, the weather, and what may have happened in those final moments, the story takes on a much deeper weight. Here's what we've learned since. 4 words. That's all it took to flip this entire story into something much darker. We're in trouble. That message was reportedly sent from Greg Biffle to her mother just minutes before the plane went down. Not a long goodbye, not a dramatic paragraph, just a blunt warning that something had already started going wrong in the air. And that's why people can't stop talking about it, because it suggests the people on board knew they were in a bad situation, while the rest of the world was still completely unaware. But here's where it gets even heavier. That text wasn't the only sign this flight was spiraling off plan fast. According to reporting tied to the family, this wasn't supposed to be a random quick hop or a casual local flight. They were headed out for what was described as a birthday trip. Greg Biffle was set to turn 56 next week. That detail changes the whole mood. This wasn't just travel. This was a milestone moment, the kind of trip people look forward to, the kind of day that's supposed to end with dinner, photos, and laughter. And then, suddenly everything flipped because the flight path didn't match the plan, and the aircraft didn't keep going, it turned back. Flight tracking showed the jet took off from Statesville Regional Airport, and then, not long after, it started looping back. That turn back is a major red flag in aviation, because planes don't do that for no reason. It usually means something happened that made continuing forward feel riskier than attempting a return landing. And if you're wondering how serious it might have been, remember that "we're in trouble" text. That's not something you send if everything's calm. But the turn back is only one piece, because the timing matters too. Reports describe the aircraft being in the air for a short window before the crash sequence ended near the runway. One report described it as a crash landing near a runway after taking off earlier that morning. Another described it as happening during an attempted landing. Either way, the key detail is this: the flight didn't just end, it ended while trying to get back down at the same airport it had just left. And that forces the biggest question of this entire part 2. What exactly went wrong that fast after takeoff, bad enough to force a return? Now we get to something that's finally being talked about clearly: the weather. One weather expert quoted in reporting described heavy drizzle and a low cloud ceiling around the time of the crash, with conditions reportedly worsening shortly after. And that matters because visibility isn't just a nice to have. In aviation, visibility and cloud ceiling can be the difference between a stable approach and a dangerously rushed decision chain. This doesn't mean weather caused anything, that's not confirmed, but it does mean investigators will treat weather like a major factor to analyze, not a footnote. And the people on the ground, some of them felt the danger before the impact even happened. Witnesses near the scene described the plane looking way too low. That's a terrifying phrase because it suggests something about the approach. Did not look normal to people watching from the outside. And when multiple reports mention the same kind of observation, low altitude, a sudden moment, then a violent outcome, it instantly becomes one of those details investigators will want to match against data. Because in crashes like this, you don't rely on vibes. You match witness accounts to hard evidence: flight track, speed, altitude, weather, communications. And speaking of evidence, this is no longer just a local response. This is now a full federal investigation. The NTSB is leading, and reporting describes a GO team being launched, specialists with expertise across critical areas: systems, power plants, recorders, drones, family assistance, operations, air traffic control, meteorology. That list matters because it tells you what investigators think could be relevant. They don't bring that many experts for no reason. It means they're preparing to examine the full chain: the aircraft, the environment, the decisions, the communications, and the timeline. And here's the part people don't always understand. The real answers don't come in 24 hours. The NTSB process is slow on purpose. They gather evidence first, protect the scene, document everything, and then build a timeline so precise that it can hold up under pressure. And according to the reporting, investigators are expected to be on scene for about a week. But final determinations can take months, sometimes a year or more, because they don't want fast answers. They want correct answers. Still, there are already major developments that shifted this from rumor to confirmation. And that's the next big Part 2 update. Earlier reporting had confusion around how many people were on board, but the updated information now points to 7 victims: Greg Biffle, Christina, his daughter Emma, his son Ryder, plus Dennis Dutton, his son Jack, and Craig Wadsworth. NASCAR's official social media also addressed the tragedy, and a joint family statement described the pain in a way that almost doesn't even feel real. And there's another detail that made this hit the NASCAR world even harder, because Greg wasn't just a driver in the past tense. He was still active in the community. Greg Biffle wasn't just remembered for racing. He was also remembered for what he did after Hurricane Helene, using his helicopter skills to help deliver aid and support to people who were stranded and cut off. Multiple statements highlighted that part of his life. Courage, compassion, stepping up when people needed help. That's why this story is landing so heavy. People aren't reacting to a headline. They're reacting to the idea that someone known for helping others was suddenly gone in the most shocking way imaginable. And then, a chilling detail resurfaced that made a lot of people stop mid-scroll. Reporting indicates Greg Biffle had survived a plane crash back in 2011, years ago. And when the public learns that someone survived a crash before, only to later lose their life in another aviation tragedy, it hits differently. Not because it explains anything, it doesn't, but because it feels like a cruel twist that nobody can make sense of. And it also makes people ask deeper questions. What do pilots remember in those moments? What choices are being made? What does trouble look like inside the cabin when you're trying to get back down? That's why Christina's text message has become the emotional centerpiece of Part 2. We're in trouble could mean many things: mechanical concerns, visibility issues, something unexpected, something time-sensitive, but none of that is confirmed, and it would be wrong to act like we know what she meant. What we do know is this: she felt something serious enough to reach out to her mother in real time, and that detail alone changes how people view the final minutes, not as a sudden mystery, but as a situation that was unfolding and felt urgent to the people inside it. And when you pair that with the flight path turning back, you get a picture that's hard to ignore. There's also a layer here that makes it even more heartbreaking. Christina had recently shared messages online about how short life is, about freedom, about not staying stuck in cycles that don't make you happy. It reads differently now, not because anyone could predict what would happen, but because it reminds people how normal life looks right before tragedy strikes. One day you're posting about work and family, and the next day, the world is reading your last message. And then, there's the part the public doesn't see clearly yet, because authorities have said identification is still being confirmed due to the severity of the post-crash fire. Officials explained that names could not immediately be released due to the post-crash fire and identification being pending confirmation from the medical examiner. That detail matters for 2 reasons. It shows how intense the aftermath was, and it also explains why early reports had gaps. So if you're seeing people online spreading definitive claims before officials confirm everything, treat that for what it is: noise. The verified details come from agencies and direct family statements, not message boards. And speaking of online talk, there's already speculation swirling, and it needs to be framed the right way. Online, people always try to fill in blanks before investigators can. Some posts will claim it was weather. Others will insist it was mechanical. Some will even throw out wild theories with zero proof. Right now, the truth is, those are guesses. Investigators will look at multiple categories: weather conditions, aircraft performance, systems, human factors, and communication timelines. And only then will they state what the evidence supports. So for now, the most honest version is also the most uncomfortable version. We don't know the cause yet, but we do know what investigators will focus on first, because the NTSB process is consistent. Early in an investigation, the goal is to lock down the timeline. When the plane took off, when it changed course, what the weather was showing, and what was happening in the minutes leading up to the attempted landing. They'll examine the wreckage pattern, the runway environment, and any available records. They'll also lean heavily on meteorology specialists and operations experts, because a return to airport situation can involve fast decision-making under pressure. And if you're wondering why the GO team includes family assistance specialists too, it's because tragedies like this ripple outward. It's not just data, it's people. The family statements describe Greg and Christina as devoted parents, and describe the kids in a way that's painful to read, because it makes you realize these weren't just names in a report. These were real lives with routines, plans, school days, and futures that were supposed to keep unfolding. And that's why this story is hitting so hard across NASCAR, across North Carolina, and across the internet. It's not just a crash. It's the sudden loss of a family, friends, and a community member on what was supposed to be a celebration trip. Now, the question becomes, what happens next, and how long until the public gets real answers? The NTSB is expected to brief the public, and investigators will be on scene working through evidence. But the final explanation, what actually triggered the turnback, what trouble was, and what factors mattered most, could take months. So here's what I want you to do. Drop your thoughts in the comments, but keep it respectful. What do you think investigators are going to focus on first? Weather, a possible technical issue, or something else entirely? And do you think that we're in trouble text points more toward a sudden problem, or a situation that was building? If you want updates the moment new verified details come out, hit like, subscribe, and turn notifications on. Because as soon as the briefing happens, we're breaking it down fast.